There's a correct way to do a license in this thing we call designer vinyl or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
designer toys. And there's a wrong way. And us as older artists or artists that have been fortunate enough to be in multiple series, you can't expect, the coach to call you off the bench every game. And Kano loves to blame me. Kano, if you're listening, I know you love to blame me.
Hey, toy family, this is the Marsham Toy Hour, where we discuss anything and everything designer toys. I'm Gary Ham.
I'm Theresa Hawkins.
Teresa, once again, no George, but for good reason this time. He's getting married this week in 2 days.
I know, so he has a completely valid excuse. I'm super excited for him and Jess, so I hope they have a fantastic wedding, and I can't wait to get George and hopefully Jess on to tell us all about it.
I hope so. I miss George. It's been a while. And Jess, too. We haven't talked to the they'll be newlyweds next time I talk to them. So maybe we can play the newlywed game with them. We can get another artist couple. We can have newlywed game and all that sort of fun stuff. But it won't be next week because, we're recording every other week now. So it'll be, not next week, April 30th they'll come back on?
April 30th? You mean August?
I mean August.
Oh, man. I have to say, us going every other week is really weird. It's throwing me off, Gary. I feel like we don't talk anymore.
I know. We've been doing this 2.5 years, and you get in a routine. And so it is a little weird having like a weekend off. Where I'm like, why? I don't feel guilty watching a movie right now. Because normally I would be editing. But no, I kind of like this guilt-free weekend. But at the same time, I kind of miss talking to you guys every week.
All right, well, I'm glad you're at least getting some of the R&R in that we talked about. That, you needed a little brain break. So.
Yep. But we're
back. That makes me feel a little better. But yes, we're back. And we're back with a guest.
We are. And we got a great guest tonight. This is the guy I've been trying to get on for a while now, and it's finally worked out. So I'm happy to say that our tonight's guest, he's OG. He's been a designer and customizer in this so-called designer toy scene for 14 years now. He began his toy career in 2004 by being an artist in the very first Dunny Artist series, and he never stopped. He has self-produced toys and worked with just about every company that's dabbled in toys. He's probably best well known for his condiment series seen on products from Dunnies to fire extinguishers. So let's welcome the king of condiments himself, Sket. Hey, Sket.
Hello. How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
All right. Everything's good.
So we dropped the one, did we?
What's that?
Did you drop the one? I noticed recently it seems like you've been going by Sket, not necessarily Sket One anymore.
No, sometimes people refer to me as Sket. Sometimes people refer to me as Sket One. I always wrote Sket One. It has like the number thing has to do with graffiti and being the first person to grab that particular name.
Right.
It's something that you do early on in graffiti. So the name just stuck with me. So I mean, I still, when I sign things, I sign them Sket One. But some people refer to me as Sket, some people Sket One, and some people by my government name. So.
Like government name. That's the first time I've ever heard that one. Speaking of your government given name and when you were given that, when I invited you to come on the show, I usually when I do it, I figure I have a 1 in 365 chance of it being someone's birthday. And it actually, so I'm scrolling Instagram today, and is it your wife? Is it your wife or fiance?
A fiance, soon-to-be wife.
Okay, so I'm scrolling through Instagram. I come across a post from Jamie Lee, and it is a Step Brothers poster with your faces superimposed over the characters. And you're wearing a birthday hat. So I'm like, oh, crap, is it Sket's birthday? And then I read the comments, and sure enough, it's your birthday. So I instantly DM Theresa, just letting her know it's your birthday. Just expect you're probably not going to show up. I'm sure you have better things to do. Just be prepared for it to be you and I tonight. But here you are. You're here on your birthday. So all the guests who had lame reasons for not showing up, Sket's here on his birthday, so I appreciate that, Sket.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Trust me, it's not like it used to be. It's just another day in the book. And you get my age. So
it is. When you get to our age, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 44. Yeah, birthdays and...
Yeah, I'm 47. Now 48, so...
Okay, 48 young. Let's I should start off by saying congratulations on your long career in toys. I mean, that's no easy feat to do, to remain at the top. And like I mentioned in the intro, you started out in 2004 with Kid Robot, and you were one of the few artists in the very first Dunny series. And fast forward to today, it's 14 years later, and you're helping Super Plastic kick off Janky Series 1 with them.
Yeah.
That's nuts that you're kind of... I should probably say, like... this is why people have a tough time breaking into our toy scene, because the old farts in the toy scene, they don't go away. It's 14 years. It's 14 years later, and you're still taking spots in all these awesome toy series. What's going on?
I think it's just the people that are in charge of a lot of things now, have been fans for a long time, or like working with a specific person. And some of the artists have a really good fan base, and yep. they look to bring that artist's fan base over to a new series or a new platform or whatever it be new. I honestly think that our whole scene, so to say, has grown so much that there's plenty of room for everybody, as far as making it or breaking it. Like if you were around back in 2004 and, you're around today, it's literally totally different. It's transformed itself over those 14 years. I mean, ridiculously.
For sure. I mean, just looking at the two series that you were in, I mean, the first Dunny series, you kind of look at it today, and they were very simple and almost crude in design compared to what they're able to do with pad printing and mass and all that additional scope that we're now seeing in Dunnies and platforms. So, I mean, things have really greatly changed in the past 14 years, for sure.
Oh, definitely. I mean, even everyone's design skills have grown, and what you can do, what you can't do, and what materials you're able to use. Sometimes you don't even need to work with a company, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people are self-producing nowadays. We went through the whole platform toy phase where there was every platform you could think of out at, I would say, between 2008 and 2010. I just saw so many different people make toys.
Right.
And so many different platforms come out. It's grown so much. It's crazy to see the growth.
So many platforms. I mean, nowadays it seems like we've kind of weeded out some of the weaker pieces, and now we're finally down to, I mean, Dunny hasn't gone anywhere in 14 years, and you got Bear Brick and Android and some of the stronger ones. But I remember you talking about just how many there were at one point. I think it was around 2008, 2009-ish. I went over to the DKE warehouse, and Dov Kellemer, he seemed to collect a lot of the blanks, and on his back wall in his office was just, I don't know, it must have been 40 to 60 just different blank platforms.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where the whole condiment idea came from, because when I did the condiment thing, it was more of the statement of the scene at the particular time. It had to do with, literally you can go into a toy shop and there was just platforms lined up. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And you could really choose, like, there was just all these brands. And that's when Toy2R was involved, and they had all their platforms, and Kid Robot had Money coming out and all their platforms. And then you had regular designers releasing their particular designs. And of course, the first one they would release would be a blank. So you had all the independent stuff too. So It was crazy.
What's the biggest change that you've seen in your long career?
I would think it has to do with people being able to do things themselves and not having to rely on a company to make it, or break it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you have not a large amount of money, but a decent amount, it is not cheap. I can tell you that much to produce your own stuff. But I mean, if you have a decent amount of money, you can produce a decent product at a decent price. And yeah, that's the great thing about it is it's low numbers. No matter what you're going to do, they're going to be low numbers. So the collectability is there. And nowadays you have things like Instagram and, of course, all the social media outlets that weren't as popular, back in the day. But now it's just so popular. So you have this whole marketing tool that you could use to get your work out there also. So I mean, it's literally changed. If you decide to, I want to be in toy culture, mm-hmm. You can do it from your house. I lived in Connecticut and I lived in New Haven, and that was about an hour and 45 minutes, maybe an hour and a half from New York City.
Okay.
So in 2004, anytime I wanted to take part in something or wanted to show up, everything was out of brick and mortar. So I would have to get in my car and drive to it to take part in that particular event.
Right.
So I was going to New York maybe like twice a week, 3 times a week to go to art shows, to show my face, to meet people, network, etc. And, that's gone away too. I mean, there's still art shows and stuff like that, but I wouldn't say it's as common in the toy industry as it was back in the day.
I 100% agree. I started collecting in 2003, producing 2000, I don't know, 7, 8, something like that. And I do remember the days of every single weekend it seemed like there was a custom event going on at a brick and mortar location somewhere. And that was really how you would break into the toy scene. I mean, to get noticed, I guess you would really, it was largely because there was not much social media at the time, so it was largely based on getting your work seen by the toy blogs. So we would be sending customs into Spanky Stokes, Vinyl Pulse, Plastic and Plush, Toys Are Evil. Those were all the big blogs back then. And from there, you would hope that a brick and mortar location would see your work on a toy blog and then want to invite you to participate in one of the custom events. And then from there, the hopes of most people was that somehow, some way, a toy company would then reach out to you and want to produce toys with you. And I think for most people, almost everybody, it was Kid Robot. I mean, be a part of a Dunny series back then was everything in the world. I mean, it had so much clout to it. Like, to be in a Dunny series back then was basically saying, hey, you've arrived, you've been recognized. And you kind of skipped that whole process because in 2004, you were one of the few artists in the very first Artist Dunny series.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was weird. The whole thing started for me, of course, like most things start, it was by accident. At the time, I was doing a graffiti show, which was about Vaughn Bodie, who's an artist. I don't know if anybody's familiar with him, but he was an old cartoon artist, underground artist, and he created characters like Cheech Wizard, and there's a bunch of other characters within his comics. And I used to hold an event every year where we used to paint all his comic book characters, and Mark, his son, used to come down from Massachusetts. And Mark hit me up and he said, I'm heading to the city and I'm going to meet. We're making a Cheech Wizard toy. You should come in for the show. And I said, okay, that sounds cool. Yeah, I'm definitely going to come. And at the time, I was already familiar with Kid Robot, and I was buying Kid Robot stuff offline. And I got introduced to Tristan at the show, and me and him were talking, and he handed me a DVD of a Dunny template, and he was like, if you,
a DVD.
I know, a DVD. At least it's not a floppy disk.
And he was like, yeah, he's like, here's a template, if you know Illustrator and you do graffiti, do some designs. And I was like, yeah, I could totally do this. I'll get it to you in a couple days. And it's exactly what I did. And I sent it to him, and I was like, oh, if something happens, it happens. But it wasn't anything I was really like, oh my God, I need this to happen.
Yeah.
It was more like, oh, if this happens, it's cool. Because I was doing a lot of graffiti at the time, and that's where my focus was. I mean, with my day job, of course. And then, once he was like, yeah, dude, we're going to take this design from you, and it's going to go in Series 1. I was like, cool. And then I went down to one of his art shows in the city, and he showed me the prototype, and that's when I was like, holy shit, this is real. Like when you hold your first design in your hand, that's when it's like, holy shit, I produced a toy.
Yeah.
It's a pretty crazy feeling.
It's pretty awesome.
And then once we had the release for Dunny Series 1, Tristan was like, I want to have canvases from all the artists at the show. And, I went to art school and I've done canvases before, but I honestly, I did not touch a canvas in probably 10, 12 years. And I was like, okay, all right. And that's when everything just started to kind of like just take off,
Yeah.
It was like one thing after another because of my canvas. I got a show at the Kid Robot show in San Francisco. I got a show at the Kid Robot store in New York. So I had to produce work for that. It was like because of the toys, everything else started to take off, for me, because I had to support it through promotion,
Yep. No, totally.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you don't have to do any of that. I mean, honestly, you could do it all from your desktop.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, you went starting with working with Kid Robot, and now it seems like these days you're mostly just doing stuff on your own. Do you prefer it?
Well, no, I mean, I'm still doing stuff with Kid Robot. I have things, of course, I can't discuss, but there's a lot of things coming down the pipeline.
With Kid Robot?
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm working with Super Plastic, and of course, because, Huck and Paul are great people, and I still produce stuff on my own, but producing stuff on my own is a lot different because the price point on producing stuff your own, you can't really wholesale it.
No.
And here's the thing, it's like the high-end custom work stuff that I do, like my Dunnies and stuff, that has a price point that reflects the actual piece. But if I wanted to do something for the public that's like, say, 30 to, $60 to $70 range, it's really hard to do that by yourself unless you go to China. And then that's a lot of money.
Yep.
Yeah. So, it's a good point. It makes sense for you, I guess, as an artist to be able to do both is really great because you've got a kid robot or a super plastic helping produce stuff that they can sell at a low dollar amount for people to say, hey, I've got some pieces made by Sket. But then on the other end, you're doing stuff that's more high end, limited, self-made. So you kind of can balance and have both.
Can I just say I haven't fully adjusted to this kid robot super plastic thing yet. I know they're two separate companies, but Budnitz is part of both. Huck was part of Kid Robot for so long. So it's kind of strange to hear that they're not the same anymore. They're two separate groups.
Yeah, they definitely are. And, it's like, how can Paul had his time at Kid Robot, and he got out, and he started to make bikes. And from that point forward, he really didn't have any involvement in Kid Robot anymore.
Yeah.
I dealt with Bob Africa, and then, of course, I dealt with Frank after that.
Yep.
And when Huck decided to go with Paul, Huck was kind of calling it quits and retired, and he was basically going to hang up his gloves and get a 9 to 5. And Paul was the one to be like, no, you can't, you have to get back into it. And he should, because, Huck's super talented. He's super skilled, and, he has a great body of work and a great history within our industry. And he should be exactly where he is.
Oh, definitely.
So it's like,
have the dynamics been different working with Kid Robot versus working with Super Plastic?
Yeah, I'd say it's just like working with two different companies. Yeah, there's different, they do things differently than Kid Robot does, and it's just the way the blueprint of that particular company is laid out. Mm-hmm. You know what I don't know if that makes any sense. And what I'm trying to say is, like, the people I deal with at Kid Robot and the communication ladder and all that kind of stuff and the production is different than the blueprint over at Super Plastic and the communication I have with them and how they go about doing things.
Sure. Okay.
It's also, they're also at the beginning stages, Super Plastic. So it's, they still have a lot of chess pieces to move into place to make their moves, Yeah, they don't even, do they even have a physical product yet? I don't even think they do.
I've seen test poles. I saw some gold slippers just the other day. So they're there. They're getting there, but no, we have not seen actually like a fully painted figure just yet. But the difference too, I think, Super Plastic is just starting out, so I would imagine they're still very small. I still imagine it being Paul and Huck, and then maybe one or two other people, like interns or someone helping out on marketing and stuff like that. But Kid Robot is much bigger. They have devoted people for every aspect within the business and all that. Like you said, different ladders for different things too. And then when you're talking about working with the different iterations within the company, so you've worked with Budnitz, you worked with Bob Africa, now you're working with Frank. When there's a change in role players or creative directors, do you notice it? Does it always feel like it's the same Kid Robot, or does it feel like there's different stages where you say there was, a new Kid Robot, an old Kid Robot, Frank's Kid Robot? What's been your perspective on that, having worked with them for so long?
No, there's definitely stages. From 2004 to the time they moved to Colorado, which was, I can't remember what year it was, 2009, maybe 2010.
Sounds right.
That was like the Kid Robot I loved. That was friends and family working for Kid Robot within. I would go into the city and go up into the offices, and I would just know everybody at every position. Mm-hmm. And I would travel with these people. We would go to parties. We would be in different countries together. And it was just like a family, It was straight up family. And when it moved from New York to Colorado, that's when everything was disbanded. Like, a lot of people left. It was kind of like a very sad point in Kid Robot for me. Just because I knew that, I wasn't going to have that kind of connection with those people anymore because everybody left.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard all that too. I know that the move from New York to Colorado definitely changed things. I know I've heard a lot of integral players that was part of Kid Robot New York to not make that move, and one name I've always heard was Baroness, Nicole Baroness. She didn't make that move, and she was, I guess, really a large player within Kid Robot. She was the one that did a lot of artist management and relations and putting together shows and trading parties and doing spectacular events. She was a large part of why Kid Robot was what it was back in the day. And so her not making that move, I'm sure that definitely played a part. And Paul Budnitz came on this podcast and talked about the move too, and he agreed it probably wasn't the best decision for Kid Robot to leave the the art, creative, urban feel that is New York City to an outdoorsy, laid back kind of Colorado town. So then Paul ended up selling his portion of the company, moving on, like you said, going on and doing Budnitz bicycles. And so I don't know. It's kind of they made the move, and I don't know if they ever fully adjusted to life in Colorado. It's definitely not the same it was when they were in New York, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I visited the Colorado office, but I might know 3 people in there, including Frank.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not like it used to be, where I would walk in and I would just be like, go hang out in this person's office for an hour and then go get lunch with 5 people. And yeah, it was just a lot more family.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds nice. And it sucks when you kind of know all the players in a company and you've built personal relationships beyond just the professional. And when you lose that, it kind of sucks. Every time you work on a project, you're working with someone new. And so, I mean, I get that. But it's great to hear that you're working back with Kid Robot in a more capacity situation, because it seems like over the past several years, a lot of the big players that they used and worked with a lot in series and stuff, they kind of drifted away a little bit from using some of those artists. And it does seem like a new family has developed over at Kid Robot. And so it's nice to hear that they're continuing to work with you and make new projects with you.
I think when it comes down to it, is there's got to be some sort of rotation. Even the old Kid Robot would bring in new artists, and they would have new people in series and stuff like that. And us as older artists or artists that have been fortunate enough to be in multiple series, you can't expect the coach to call you off the bench every game. You just have to understand that this is your place, and if you get an opportunity, you have to be as grateful for that opportunity as the person trying to get the opportunity for the first time.
Yep.
And if you start phoning stuff in, like a lot of people will say, like,
I heard that, yeah.
I phone stuff in with condiment stuff, but I mean, you have to take into account your fans and what people, love from you and what people don't love from you. Mm-hmm. And of course you want to make the right marketing move too for the company. I mean, me personally, when I think about designing something or about submitting a design, I hope I'm like every other designer. I think about cost. I think about the efficiency of my design and how it's going to pull through, and it's not going to drain Kid Robot or the producer's pockets, and how much are my fans are going to like this, and how I'm going to support this, and when is this going to drop. And nowadays it's totally different. You barely have signings anymore. If you actually have your piece drop at an event, say like a Comic-Con or say like that, like that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Because then you have some dollars behind it. But a lot of companies are just going to post it up online and be like, oh, we have this for sale, so it's changed a lot. So, I mean, I'm just trying to say that I don't think anybody should phone in. I think everybody should really take into consideration what they're doing for their fans and for the community and put out really good stuff. I mean, the last, the Scott Tolson, the curated one that he just did, the Cryptid, I love that. I love that. That series is, it's all new sculpts. It's, everyone's using different materials. It's like a really cool looking series, and the people that are involved in it is a great mix,
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And we're echoing a bit. I think it's a good point, Gary, like bringing back some of the artists who were doing stuff back in the beginning and letting them come back and make new pieces, I think is great. But I also like that Kid Robot has been trying to reach out on the artist side and pull new people in. Because, as you were saying, Sket, the community has evolved and grown, and there's lots of great people out there and lots of great artists. And so I like seeing the mix as a collector and seeing artists that have never gotten a production piece get one before, as well as bringing back people like you to come make more great stuff. So I'm excited to hear you've got more coming, but I'm also excited to always see new artist stuff too. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you guys mentioned the City Cryptid series. I mean, that series, there was several new artists that have never done a Dundee design before, and it's not like they were newcomers. You know, they're not up and coming. These are artists that have been around for a while, very established, large fan bases and stuff, but they have never done a Dundee. So good on Scott Tolleson for curating and Kid Robot for letting these artists design a Dunny, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future for Kid Robot, so that's awesome. And I imagine when you're curating and developing a series, I like seeing a sprinkling of a very well established artist and introducing new blood to the toy scene. I think that's fun. I mean, that's why I prefer mixed artist series over a single artist series, because I think mixed artist series, generally there's something always in there for me, and I think that's the same for a lot of collectors. I think it gets more of the community involved versus appealing to that one single artist fan base. And going back to what Sket was saying about artists phoning it in or kind of doing the same thing over and over, I mean, that's kind of what you got to do with a gallery and a toy company in a sense, because they're investing in you. They're wanting to continue selling to that fan base that they spent the time developing. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you're wanting to, as an artist, wanting to develop a new style or a new approach or do something new, most galleries and artists aren't going to want to take that ride with you, because that's a risk to them. They want to continue selling to that fan base that has been following you and supporting you all this time, and they kind of want you to stay in that same wheelhouse. So that's why a lot of the time you are seeing artists kind of doing the same thing for the most part.
All right, so I'm gonna act stupid for a second. What do you all mean when you say phone it in?
Phone it in means like if somebody was to say like Sket's going to do a design and I bet you 100% it's going to be a condiment series because that's a safe bet. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Like take any artist's thing or what they're known for, and a lot of people will say that's phoning it in.
Okay.
It's
versus
just
like expanding or trying something new, but
trying
at the same
something
time,
new, right? It's just an opinion. That's all it is an opinion. Personally, I think about it deeper than that. Gary said it, and you can alienate fans. There's a lot of ways you can alienate fans. I've seen a lot of artists produce a ton of work in a short amount of time. Okay, and when that happens, personally, what I see is you're alienating your fans because they don't have the money to collect all that stuff that you're producing in that short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're like, okay, I really want that, but I really want that one too. And they're making decisions, which if you spread out your releases, then, you're giving your fans a chance to actually collect your work and to be involved in your work, rather than being like, that dude's releasing way too much shit. I can't afford it anymore. I'm going to stop collecting him.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really solid point that I've never had to think about, I guess, as a collector, but it's super smart, because you're right. I mean, the scene is so big. Constantly I'm messaging Gary and I'm like, oh my God, I want to buy this, but I want to buy that. And oh my God, this. And so you have to choose, right? You have to sit and say, what am I going to buy? And if you were really into a specific artist and that artist is pumping out so much stuff, you end up either just picking one of the few or just being like, whoa, I can't give up.
Or you could do something like what Scott Tolleson does. He works in a variety of different styles, so he probably has different types of fans for certain things. They're not collecting everything Scott Tolleson, because he's got cute, he's kind of got the gross and grotesque looking stuff. Yep. So it's like he branches out. He does the cooking no good, and that's for people like you, Theresa, and then he does Dad Bod Deadbeat, and that is not for you, and it's for a completely different fan base. So that's another approach. If you want to keep producing and doing different things, you got to make sure it's hitting different markets, and that's where you'll kind of spread the money around.
And I totally agree with that, and I've totally done it myself. I do a lot of Star Wars art. I do a lot of graffiti art and my mural art, and a lot of illustration, and it's sprinkled throughout different products at different price points. I definitely take note as into, I don't want to. I know everyone can't afford a $500 custom. I get.
What are you talking about?
I get that, and I want people to be able to have stuff. That's why having, 3-inch production figures is like, I feel like is a key point to, to my career. You know, I want people to be able to get introduced to my history of artwork through a $13 or $15 toy.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, right now I feel like, and granted, I guess the things I see of you that I definitely pay most attention to is the condiment type stuff. Like you just did that honey bear, which is super freaking adorable.
Amazing.
And kudos, because that was so cool. But I feel like from when I see the stuff you self-produce, you tend to stay in that 8-inch, $500-ish range. And then you only got the sort of Kid Robot production stuff on the low end. But I don't really feel like I see a lot of that in between, like $100 piece or what have you, whether it's like a 3-inch version of your 8-inch or anything like that. And I'm just curious why you don't seem to, and maybe I'm just missing it or not as familiar, but is that just an area you don't see yourself wanting to play in, of self-producing, like, say, 3-inch versions of your 8-inch at like $150 price point that lets people get a honey bear?
I laugh because I think I know how he's going to answer. So go have at it, Sket.
I have a bunch of other items, like I did the syringe needles. That was more of an art piece, and that was like 100 and change. I did my Milk character and my Clorox character from the Hood Good series, and those were like underneath $100, but they were low numbers. I release other things. I don't release 3-inch dunnies. The reason why I don't release 3-inch dunny is because I'd rather have those produced as production figures than customs. 3-inch dunnies are just, they just don't hold presence, like an 8-inch piece does. And I could create and do so much more with an 8-inch piece at that size than I could do with a 3-inch. Like if I did a run of 3 inches and sold them for $100, I did it once, and I did it with Dodger. We did it as a bootleg piece, and it just, the quality of what I expect from doing resin customs just wasn't there. And I just don't feel like I could do that,
All right, let's get real. Let's get real for a second, Therese, because I know as a collector you see things very differently than Sket and I see things as an artist. Like as an artist, working on an 8-inch platform and a 3-inch platform really isn't that much different. Time and effort is pretty much about the same, but I know collectors, they'll look at that 8-inch honey bear and they're like, oh, $400. Could you make it in 3-inch for $100? And that's not how it works. Because an artist would rather make a $500 piece, sell 10 of them, and make $5,000 versus having to make.
Only hope. I
don't even know how many 3-inch ones you would have to make that same type of money, and you'd probably be working 4 or 10 times as hard. That's why someone like Sket, who's doing like real high quality resin pulls and a lot of customizers, we just can't. There's really not that much of a price shift from an 8-inch to working on a 3-inch. But I know you as a collector, you look at that 3-inch one and see only $50 to $100 in a price range.
Yeah, it's exactly that. But at the same time, I also here's a perfect example is the Sket Racha. Okay. I did the 8-inch custom first, and great things came from the 8-inch custom. And then once the 3-inch came out, not only did 100 people get it, thousands of people got it.
Right.
People who don't even collect toys got it, and it brought in so many more new fans. And that's what I would like the 3-inch to actually do. I would actually like it to be accessible for everybody and not to break the bank. Yeah. I mean, I'd feel guilty, honestly, asking for $100 for a 3-inch. I really would.
Right.
I would.
Yeah. I ask selfishly, I think, because one, I'm a small toy collector because that's just who I am. Like, I like smaller things, and because I love your honey bear, but I can't swing. Like, I couldn't swing it. I couldn't. I would love to, but I couldn't. So I'm like, I want it. So all I can say then is I hope somehow you produce it with Kid Robot.
All I can say is, if you want, all you have to do is send them a nice email and be like, it would be great if you had Sket One produce 3-inch honey bears. That's all you have to do.
Dude, I saw, I was paying attention to the comments. I mean, come on. If they're not considering producing a 3-inch, honestly, I would love to see a 5-inch because that's about the right size of the real condiment. So I would love it to be a 5-inch, but I understand all the other ones have been 3 inches, so better to match the line that's already been produced in the past. But
Once the cat is done, they can do whatever they want.
Well, kind of related to this, I'm thinking about Kid Robot producing your customs. I'm
Quality?
just curious. Well, yeah. Well, I'm just curious because, like your sketch Rotches,
Yep.
the way they were produced was different than the typical dunny. Like it was more of like a hollow plasticky. I'm probably describing it wrong, but it was more of like a plastic than like a vinyl.
Right.
Was that your choice to push for that particular approach?
Well, ABS plastic, you can get a clear plastic, and because we were doing the half used, it was decided to go with ABS, and you can print better on ABS than you can vinyl, and there's a lot of small type on the actual design, so in having all those different elements going on, it just was the smarter move. Of course, trust me, you're never going to get the quality of a resin custom and what you can achieve in resin with vinyl. Never. It will never happen. And that's why the resin customs are so pricey and so high end. We discussed it. We discussed doing it in vinyl, and we discussed doing it in ABS, and just ABS was a smarter move.
Do you think going forward that'll be a material of choice?
It depends. Yeah, I mean, if we end up doing stuff in clear and trying to get that particular style of a bottle and stuff like that, it is the clear choice because it's clear. Like, I mean, clear vinyl is cloudy and it's not going to give you the same effect. It's almost like a ghosted or a frosted kind of clear.
Okay, cool. I was just curious, and I mean, we can get into quality too if you want, Gary. Because
no, I don't think there is because Scott already kind of touched on it. You're not going to get from his 8-inch high-end resin productions down to a 3-inch, mass production dunny. The quality is going to be different. There are going to be sacrifices. Kid Robot does have to sell these things for a $10 to $15 price point, whatever. So there's going to be sacrifices made in quality for sure. So I don't think there's any reason to go into that. But so let's move on. But before we do that, let's take a quick break and mention some of our sponsors. So for all your designer toy needs, wants, and desires, be sure to check out StrangeCatToys.com. When you go to StrangeCatToys.com, be sure to use our promo code SOTheresa. It's all one word, SOTHERESA. If you use that at checkout, you'll receive 10% off your entire order. And also there is 3DRetro.com. 3D Retro also has a beautiful brick and mortar location out there in Burbank adjacent Southern California. So if you're in the area, be sure to check it out. They host a lot of great events. I hear it's a beautiful store, so it's something that you won't want to miss if you're in the area. And for all your daily designer toy news, be sure to like and follow SpankyStokes.com and TheToyChronicle.com. And be sure to download the Toy Chronicle application at any one of your favorite application stores. All right, Sket, so we were just talking about your condiment series, and this is something I've always been curious about because when you work in pop culture and working with other brands and established RPs and kind of borrowing their signature and reapplying it into something that's kind of your own, I've always been curious, like how often do you run into a situation with a brand, especially when you're mass producing something like these condiments with Kid Robot? When you're doing that, do you run it by the company first, or do you just forge ahead and kind of worry about maybe just getting a cease and desist later down the line?
Well, on the custom stuff, I just forge ahead. I've only had one person come after me. The customs are such low numbers, and they're such they're parody pieces and done in an art form that it wouldn't really be worth it for the company to actually spend the dollars to have their lawyers actually send me a cease and desist. And by the time they did, it would be useless, because it would be done and over with and already on to the next. So the only time it happened was back in, I think, 2008 or 9. It was from Tabasco. And I actually just straight up used the Tabasco logo. I didn't change anything. I didn't change it to Sket Tabasco or
Skit Basco. Yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't work.
I didn't, I just ended up using Tabasco, and they
Yeah.
sent me a cease and desist, and I just wrote them back, not more of a, I didn't do it. I wrote them back as more of like, how are you not using this as a great opportunity in marketing to, reach a fan base that you might have never reached before, because I never understood that, it's like, why are you going to attack an artist for trying to put your place in pop culture?
Right.
And they dropped it immediately. It was nothing. Like, I never heard from them again after I got it and I wrote them back.
Okay.
It's nothing I avoided. Heinz, when we did the 3-inch Heinz stuff, Heinz contacted Kid Robot and they had concerns and they were like, we don't want to get sued for this. But when I did the Heinz stuff, I know the copyright laws and all that stuff, and I changed very minimal things. And yes, it looked like Heinz, but if you got down to the bare bones, it wasn't Heinz. Everything from PMS colors to fonts to shapes of the shield and so on.
Yeah.
So, and it was great because here was the first example of how companies and, say, an art toy can come together and actually utilize this collab branding through an artist like myself. Heinz didn't really, they let Kid Robot continue with the series, and Heinz used Kid Robot in an actual TV ad over in England.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a Heinz Beans ad, and I'm sure it's on YouTube if you look it up. And the ad starts off with somebody opening the refrigerator, and the first shot is a Kid Robot doll.
That's cool.
And that happened because of what I did.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool. It was like, oh, cool. I made two worlds that had nothing to do with each other come together. And then I think when it finally took, when it happened with Sriracha, David Tran, the owner of Sriracha, just gets it. He doesn't have a marketing department at Sriracha. He lets Sriracha, the sauce, do all its marketing for itself. He's total grassroots.
Uh-huh.
He has no department.
Wow.
So there was a show called LA Heat in Los Angeles, and it was an art show to honor Sriracha and Tapatio and being a Los Angeles staple, and both coming from immigrant backgrounds and stuff like that. So I was in the art show. I had my custom, and I had my custom extinguishers, and David Tran loved the work. He was like, I want to buy it from you. And I was like,
that's awesome.
How about if we trade? I said, you let me use your license and I'll give you the artwork. And he was like, fine, let's do it.
Huh.
And that's how the whole Kid Robot deal came about, to, produce large amount numbers of Sket Racha stuff. And he got it, he got samples. He sells them up at the factory. And the same thing with the Bear Brick. He got it. He was like, yeah, go ahead, do it up, And that was great. That was a great relationship where everybody made out. He got some cool toys and some marketing, and Kid Robot got some cool toys and some marketing. And now, the future stuff, things are going to be kind of working that way, where companies are coming together with me and producing stuff in the future. So there's going to be some really cool stuff coming.
That's awesome. That's why I call you the Condiment King. 'Cause in the beginning, I could see where maybe companies would be like, oh, who's this guy kind of using our brand a little bit? Versus now, you are so well known for this sort of thing. Like, I can see where companies are going to start wanting you to come to you and wanting to work with you on this sort of stuff. So that's awesome to hear that might be coming true.
Yeah, growing up, basically the last 15 years for me, I've been in, God, it's 20 now, I think. I've been doing marketing.
Yeah.
And, all these companies always come to us and they're like, oh, I'm looking for some cool, hip things to do that's not cheesy and doesn't come off in bad taste and da-da-da. And I've always been like, these particular brands have substance within my life. They do. I don't, I produce stuff that, literally all of us, I think, have some kind of tie to it, whether it reminds you of summer, whether it reminds you of a specific time in your life, whether it reminds you of just taste.
Yeah.
It has that, it's like music, you know what I mean? And I just wanted to marry these worlds.
And it's worked really well. It's worked really well for you, and congrats on that, because and I like what you're saying about it having a personal connection to it, because I think a lot of people would look at, pop culture artists and people borrowing off of other IPs. They would see it as they do. I've heard it before. Terms of coattailing and piggybacking, and if you don't have the license for something, you have no business doing it because it's not your thing. But I like the fact that you yourself have a very personal connection with it. Like, this means something to you. You're not just going for the low-hanging fruit of making Harry Potter stuff because Harry Potter's going to sell. Like, this stuff has meaning to you. And so in that regard, I think you are doing justice for the brands that you are borrowing from. And you've already said that David Tran loved what you're doing. So I think that's great. But what would you say to the people that would look at pop culture artists and stuff that you're doing and say that you're a piggybacker or a coattailer? What would you say to those people?
I'm not going to knock them because I've done it. As long as they have good intentions behind it. I mean, I feel like Frank has a history of it himself, and it's a part of our culture. There was a whole, the whole rave scene during the 90s borrowed everything. You know what I mean? There was T-shirts, the flyers, just everything was like literally ripped off from something or came from something or was borrowed from something. It's just culture, other parts of our, life and our history. You're grabbing it and using it. And yeah, if you're trying to bootleg it and sell, 50 million, T-shirts, that's
yes,
a little bit, that's a little bit dirty. If you're trying to sell Louis Vuitton bags, out of the back of a van, you're missing the point. Like, you're not trying to send a message through art or express something through art. You're trying to capitalize and actually, make some money off of bootlegging. I feel like there's a very fine line between bootlegging and art. And it was funny because Tristan posted about it the other day. He said, out of all the people bootlegging my stuff, he gives me a pass because I give him something every time. And I don't look at it as bootlegging. I really don't. If you're literally selling thousands and thousands and you're straight up bootlegging, then I get it. Like, I've seen Luke Chu go to China and there's T-shirts of his paintings that, are all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's straight up bootlegging, Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned the whole Kid Robot thing, because I was going to ask, like, you're obviously casting Dunnies, and I know in some cases Kid Robot may not like that, but I guess you have permission?
I would say I don't have permission. And I've been talked to about it before.
You got your hand slapped?
And we have a relationship. We have an understanding relationship. And I'm not doing anything that's honestly, sometimes when I can use vinyl bodies, I'll use vinyl bodies and just get them repainted. It depends on all the effect. I've invested. I'm not some guy who came out 2 days ago and started doing this. I'm somebody who is invested in the Kid Robot brand. And I actually, Tristan created the Dunny shape. I have much respect for the Dunny out of all the particular platforms that are out there to choose from and to do my art with. So I think it's just the relationship of what we have. We both benefit from it,
Yeah.
Like I said, the landscape of designer toys right now, it's just filled with so much stuff. And, the Dunny is a staple. And some people don't, back in the day, it was only Kid Robot at the top of the ladder. And that's not the case anymore,
On the flip side of that, though, I know a lot of like newcomers are probably seeing people like yourself, recasting Dunnies. Because what we're talking about, Teresa, is I've always heard that Kid Robot would prefer people to buy a bunch of 3-inch vinyls or 8-inch vinyls, and you have to hand paint one each individually. They don't want people recasting from the mold. But so it's okay. And I think what happens is when you get someone like Sket, who kind of has like, he's helped the brand out and he gets kind of a pass on this sort of stuff versus someone else coming in and doing it. Because
they also reverse license it back to the artist. There's been a lot of deals like that where
that's what I was going to ask. Is it reverse?
Yeah, the artist gives a cut to Kid Robot and stuff like that. So it's honestly, it's all worked out behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Because I know who else does it. Clutter has some stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, like Task One, for example, he's been doing Galaxy Dunnies and like hologram Dunnies, and like it's clearly casted resin versions of them. And I've just been curious, like, I would imagine if for some reason I said, screw it, I'm getting into resin, and I said, oh, I got a 3-inch dunny, I'm going to go mold it and pour it and do some stuff with it, I'd get pretty seriously yelled at. But it seems like some people are out there doing it, so...
But it's hard to say who's kind of reverse doing, because you mentioned Josh Kimberg's doing it for Clutto with the Octo Dunny. Tollison's doing it with the Shard, probably, because he's got even the boxes that say Kid Robot on it. So those are probably reversely done. But I know myself, so I did this custom 3-inch a long time ago. It was a little Whooper Looper Dunny, and I had to actually resculpt on 4 additional ears to get the Whooper Looper to pull off. And I got a huge reception for that. Tons of emails, people wanting me to make that. And I never pursued it because I didn't feel like that I could recast it. And I wasn't going to buy a bunch of dunnies to make the glue on the additional 4 ears and sand. It would have been a major pain in the ass. And the reason I didn't pursue it is because I felt that I wouldn't have permission to recast it.
Well, Gary, sounds like you need to get that permission.
And also, what we were talking about earlier, because it was 3-inch, they're not that easy to paint, and people would want them for $100, and they would hardly be worth my time to paint them for $100. You're making minimum wage at that point, so there's that part too.
Yeah. You know what you need to do, Gary? You need to go buy a 5-inch, or I guess 3 5-inch, and make a new 5-inch version of it. And get Kid Robot's blessing to cast and sell it so we can all finally have Dunny Whooper Loopers.
There we go, because the application of those designs is really actually pretty simple, so it wouldn't be that hard to do. It's not a bad idea.
It's funny because George is going to be so mad that he missed this conversation. I'm just going to put that out there.
I know he was bummed. He wasn't. I told him who the guest was this week, and he was bummed that he wasn't going to be on with you. But he's like, my mom's coming into town tonight. I gotta go pick her up, and so he says hello.
Oh, that's awesome. Jordan,
do you think he's missing this Dunny conversation, Sket?
I'm just missing that and missing the duplicating and resin conversation. And it in reality, it's a case by case situation. You know what I mean? The artist has to discuss this stuff if they're going to work with Kid Robot. You know, I've been doing customs for Kid Robot since day one. I mean, honestly, since day one. Like my first custom ever was for a show that Tristan had. And my second custom I actually gave to Tristan. My third custom, or that might have been my fifth, that was a 20-inch dunny, at the 20-inch dunny show. So, I mean, the difference came when you started doing one custom and then started doing 10 customs. That's when the questioning all started and stuff like that.
No, I get you. Like you said, it's a case-by-case basis, and it probably just depends who the artist is and whatnot. So, okay, so when you're doing your honey dunny and you're doing the pre-sales, is there like a maximum amount that is not going to go over 100 or something like that, or is it just however many you ordered, you just fulfill all orders?
Things have changed over the years. At one time, I would say, I would maybe bank a decent amount at the very beginning. But now it's few and far between. I would say on the last 2 years of producing customs, if I break even of my costs, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm honestly, I'm doing this more for the love of doing customs than this isn't my main job, I don't.
That's why we keep our day jobs, so we can do this toy stuff on the side.
It's expensive. Yeah, exactly. It's definitely not the thing that I would rely on. I do a bunch of different stuff, and this is more for the love of the art and for the toy and for the platform and for my fans.
Yeah.
And the people that do collect this kind of stuff that are still out there.
And I think it's important to note that, because I think as people come into the scene, like, I'm familiar enough that I see your price tag and it does not, like, I totally understand it. It makes complete sense. But I know there's other people who come in and might look and go, how is that worth $500? But they don't realize all the amount and time and effort you're putting into your craft. And the fact that you're saying right now, like, hey, if I just get my money back, I'm good. I mean, crazy, right? Like, people don't realize how expensive it is to do this stuff. I think so many people think, oh, they're doing it on their own. They can just, like, whip that up and it costs like 20 cents to make. And it's like, no, like, that's not at all the case.
I get the funniest questions all the time. Like for the majority, everyone thinks it's real. It's a real package.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
is
Yeah.
there real honey in it? And then when they find out there's not real honey, they're like, "Are you kidding me for that price?" And they just miss the whole art and toy thing. And so there's those people. There's people that get it and are just like, "That's cool. That's awesome." And of course, don't buy this particular kind of stuff. And then there's people that have grown, they want to invest in, they want to flip their investment. They've been buying 3 inchers and they're finally at a point in their life where they can buy something a little bit more high end and they can invest in a piece like that. And the numbers are a lot lower than anybody could ever imagine. I don't release the numbers because I like to have that secret out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How many are really out there? And
it does make it a little more mysterious.
Yeah, when I ship them out and I ship them to like some countries that I'm just looking on a map like, where the hell is that?
And that's a scary thing to send out something that's that expensive to some of these faraway lands. I mean, you never know what's going to happen with customs and all that sort of stuff. I know it's scary for myself, and it has to be really scary for you to send out something someone dropped $500 on.
I protect myself as much as I can.
Now, you talk about these limited run resins you do, and I know you tend to be like a one and done. You've done this honey bear, you've put it up for pre-order. It is now sold out. Whatever has been ordered is what you're making. That'll be the end of it, right?
Correct.
So do you ever, but then there's times, right, where...
I have mine. Of course, I hold myself one for the archive.
Okay.
And then one for display.
Okay.
Do you call it number 11?
Yeah, I get the lucky. They just usually just sit on my shelves or they sit in my archive. I just keep an archive of everything.
We should all have at least one.
Yeah, no, you should totally keep one. But where I was going is, you make these limited custom runs. There are times I could see, like the Sket One, for example, you made a custom, then you end up making production versions of it. Do you feel like then you've taken a design, you've quote unquote retired and brought it back to life? And is there issue with that? Like, with the people who bought the custom be like, oh, why'd you go do that? Or
if you have the custom in front of you and you have the actual piece, the other piece in front of you, the production piece, there's no comparing the two. You know what I mean? There's no, oh my God, they look so much alike that, there's just no comparison. Like the used Sket One that I produced in resin looks so real and so authentic. I mean, you have to literally hold it and see it to believe it. When you hold the production used, you clearly can tell that it's a pad printing or a paint on top of the actual ABS plastic and the feeling of the ABS and all that. So I just feel like that design gets to be, plus there was a huge amount of time. I think there was about 6 years in between the custom release and when the production figure came out. And that's the only figure that it actually, that particular thing happened. But I've heard someone who has both, and they weren't disappointed. They were just like, yeah, there's no reason to buy it. They had the custom. They felt, they were just like, yeah, I have the custom. I'd much rather have the custom than the production piece. But the people who couldn't afford the custom now have a production piece, and they happen to be content with it because they didn't spend $500.
No, I mean, it's kind of the best of both worlds, right?
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's the only design that would happen on that it's happened on, and I don't see it happening in the future anytime soon.
Boo. Well, I still need to write my letter about Honey Bear, so.
No, I definitely want that one, and I would love it to have a little bit of squeeze to it, but I know that's not going to happen. But
oh man, yeah, squeezy.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Well, okay. So we've been talking a lot about condiments. Sorry, Gary, I have one more question.
Have that. I know you're.
Yeah. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. So we're talking about all this work you tend to do on condiments, and then you get pulled into super plastic, and you didn't do a condiment. So I'm curious.
What's up, Sket? Why no condiment, Janky?
I actually did one in the mix. Paul is a very creative person, and he likes to keep things fresh, and he likes to keep things new. and it just happened. It happened. They didn't pick that particular design.
Yeah.
Like anytime I do a series, I submit a bunch of different fronts. That's all I do. I'll illustrate the fronts of the actual figure, and I'll do like, I don't know, anywhere from 6 to sometimes even 10. And I'll be like, go ahead, choose.
Yeah.
Whatever they choose is what they choose.
Yeah. And it does, it's kind of weird, but it almost feels like there's a loyalty to Kid Robot in that regard to have that condiment thing from you. I know it's not a loyalty thing, and really anybody and everybody should be able to have that from you. But in some regards, in this very niche, very small toy scene, it's kind of cool that condiment thing is kind of mostly a Dunny thing. And then off on your own, you're kind of doing them in fire extinguishers and a lot of other product. But at least as far as vinyl goes, it's on a Dunny.
Yeah,
I kind of like that.
Yeah, I've always, like I said, I have a lot. I give props to Tristan at every turn I possibly can. If it wasn't for him, I would never have been in this particular realm of my life. It just would have never have happened. And I have respect for my beginnings and where I came from and what I got involved in. And, the Dunny shape is something that's very close to me, and I've worked with and studied and know what works, know what doesn't work, know what I can do. And even in my customs, a lot of people will say, when you do customs, they're very simple. And it's always been a big deal to me not to lose the shape of the actual platform figure.
Uh-huh.
Because the shape of the platform figure is what the custom is all about. Like, I see a lot of other artists, they'll mold until the point where you can't even tell what the base figure is. And that's totally up to them. That's their choice and their prerogative. And I respect it. Me personally, I want you to be able to look at something and be able to say that's a Dunny.
Yeah.
Or that's a key, or whatever. That's a money.
So knowing that, yeah, definitely. Tristan Eaton, he designed an amazing platform. The fact that it's still around and kicking and doing as well as it is 14 years later, that's a huge props just to the platform that he designed. Not many platforms could have the longevity that it has. And the fact that it means so much to you and a lot of other collectors. Let's go back a year ago. Did it break your heart when you saw that it was licensed out to the DC? Did you? Because I know a lot of collectors and artists, we all gave a unified sigh because we don't want that. We all kind of see the Dunny as an artist platform, not something that we want to see go out to other licensed brands. So what was your reaction when you saw the Batman and the Joker in the Dunny form?
You're talking to somebody who does licensed brands.
No, but I understand. But in the same regard,
I think here's the deal. If you're going, I feel like with any licenses, okay, there's a correct way to do a license in this thing we call designer vinyl, or whatever you want to call it, designer toys. And there's a wrong way to do it, okay? The wrong way is to basically do a shit job and slap stuff on and get it out the door, okay? If you take that license and you do it in a creative manner and have artists involved in it, an actual artist name, like perfect example, look at the stuff that, Brant Peters and Tara McPherson have done with the DC stuff.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's not off brand for, the comic characters they worked on, yet it still has their artistical touch that's, you can look at it and be like, that's tight. And that's the right way to do licensed stuff. That Dunny series did not have any soul.
Agreed.
It didn't have any soul. Yeah. So I'm not mad about the Dunny being licensed. I just feel like you have to have that soul and artistic touch to a license to make it feel worthy of the shape. That's, yeah.
No, well said. Well put. I agree.
That's it. I didn't like that Dunny series whatsoever at all. I thought it was terrible, and I'm entitled to that opinion. I do think the Dunny series could have been a lot better, but when you work with certain licenses, the licensor might not let you do certain things.
Yeah.
Well, they might say, no, we don't like that, or no, you can't do that, or no, we don't want to use that particular time period for that particular character.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that you might have to battle with the license, and sometimes maybe the project's better off dead than trying to make, a round peg fit in a square hole.
No, exactly, and it's kind of funny because we've actually touched on this several episodes ago, talking about the licensors and how difficult they can be, and very particular they can be, and the strife of dealing with them at sometimes. Because the collectors, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but we like to complain about what could have been, what should have been, but who knows? I'm sure the creative directors of these companies and the artists, they've been fighting for probably the very same thing that everyone's complaining about, but they just weren't allowed to do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and it probably could have, but then you get into like the economics of it. Did they have enough money behind the series, and were they able to do like, high-end sculpts, and it would have been cool to have accessories pull off, and all this stuff, but you don't know unless you're the person behind, you're the fly on the wall and you're actually in the meeting going through all that stuff.
Right.
It's I've been in those meetings, and I've literally have done illustrations with great ideas, and they're like, no, and no. So
let's talk about. I mean, you've been doing this for 14 years. We all know as designing toys, you submit designs that never see the light of day. Any favorite products that projects that you can talk about that never came to fruition?
Oh man, so many.
I can think of one. The one with Mighty Jax never came through.
That's a whole story within itself. Okay. That's a really big story. I don't know. We need another whole show.
Another episode for that.
yeah. That was a big, like, the whole thing was just. I'm glad that period of my life is over.
Gary, do I know about this, or is this before me?
This probably happened before you started collecting. I mean, if you just Google searched Sket Dripple, it'll probably come up.
Yeah, DRIPPLE.
All right, let's see what I get. Oh, okay.
But yeah, there was going to be a whole artist series, and I don't remember if it went. This was several years ago, but I feel like it might have gone crowdfunding, or maybe there actually was money taken and it just never happened. But I remember this is one of those things that came out, and I'm like, that's actually a pretty cool platform. I like these designs, and yet here we are, probably 6 years later, and I don't think I've seen anything ever happen with it. So it kind of sucks, because I think it did actually go to. I think I do remember seeing actual in-hand painted samples from the factory too. It's not like it just stopped at the vector form. I think you guys took it a far distance. But like you said, maybe this is something that's for another day.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there's a lot of legality issues that happened with bad juju and funding of bad juju, and the person who was the president of the company and my partner, and a lot of stuff behind the scenes that a lot of people didn't know was going on. And yeah, I mean, it's literally like a soap opera, and it's
toy drama.
Yeah, it's definitely a period in my life that I'm glad I'm past, and I learned a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
To just stay in control of my own shit.
And that's a tough thing. Like in this designer toy scene, there's not always contracts. There's a lot of trust. There's a lot of not being paid up front in money. Like a lot of things, Theresa. A lot of this toy stuff is you're not paid in money. You're said, hey, if you submit a design or design a series, we'll catch you on the back end with 10% of the run or what have you. So a lot of times when these projects fall through, Theresa, it's a lot of wasted time in artist effort. I mean, sometimes if you do a design for a platform, maybe 2 years later another platform might pop up, and you're like, oh, you know what, that design that fell through will look great on this platform. Sometimes it does work out and pan out, but a lot of times it's a lot of headache and despair for artists.
Yeah, I worked with Kaching, who is Mind Style. Now I did a whole series of little characters. They were called the Elementals, and I did all the turnarounds for the whole series, and they ended up pulling prototypes, and they were presented at Toy Fair, and I was told they were coming out, and they never came out. And I never received anything.
Nothing.
Heartbreaking. I've done designs where, I've done tons and tons of dunny designs that I've submitted and they've never gone anywhere. I've done tons of other platforms for, any company that you could possibly think about there, I've worked with in some way. I went through, there was a time where I ended up doing I worked with this company called, they were called IRT Rangers, and then they went to Red Magic.
Oh yeah, Red Magic, yeah.
Yeah, and they did. We ended up doing this huge project called the One Love Project, and I had a character come out called Oil at the time, and they actually produced my figure, and they sent it, and they released it, and I was so excited about it. And then literally they dropped off the face of the earth, and everybody else involved in the project got dropped, and their product. I think mine and one other artist were the only two releases, and then they just disappeared.
So many companies like that out there. I mean, like Dude Box, they popped up, had a few releases, disappeared. I mean, it's not just that company that you worked with. It's been a handful.
Yeah.
Pop up and disappear.
Well, it's funny because as a collector, right, depending upon when you come into the scene, a lot of times you'll start digging into the archives, right? And you'll see this figure and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, how do I get this? And you realize, oh, like they made only a few and then like stopped. Like that dinosaur one, Gary, the Roar.
Oh, yeah, the Roar. Yeah.
I remember looking into that one and finding like, kind of like with this dripple, like I'd find like renders or sketches or stuff. And I'm like, okay, like, that had to be made, right? Like, where is that? And you find out, oh, no, like, it just stopped.
It just fell through for whatever reason. I mean, I remember I was a part of that series, Tollison, Jerome, and Martin Shu, and I remember there were several artists that had done designs for this series, and I think maybe one or two artists actually did go to vinyl form or something like that, but for whatever reason, that company came and went. They just disappeared. But what is it about this toy scene that we have so many companies that come and go just like that? Is it they think that there's money in this, they're going to get rich in this teeny tiny little toy scene? And I honestly, if you don't have the passion for this scene, that's exactly what's going to happen to you, because you do have to have the patience to spend the time that it takes to develop your reputation and make money in this toy scene. You can't just, like that Dude Box company. I mean, I know the owner of that company. He owned some other big novelty company, and he sold it, and he had some money, and he was looking for something to do, and so they formed Dude Box, and they made a bunch of lines, huge release party, making life-size versions of their product, and he threw a lot of money at it, and I don't think the Dude Box brand did that well out of the gate, and next thing you know, they disappeared. They didn't last more than a year, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why people come in, The only thing I can kind of reach back to is what I've been through, in my time. I think, I don't know, there was a time where Mind Style had really bad artist relationship. You couldn't find an artist that would work with them, and now you look at them and they're huge, and they're involved with pop, and they're involved with other people, and they're doing all this big stuff, they're doing all Ron English stuff and everything. So
Pop Life, and
so it's what happened with you in the company might not happen with another person in a company. Some of the companies are people who are like, looking for the next big thing and to get rich, and they don't know enough about it, and then they get involved and they're like, okay, I'm stepping out. This is a loss. I tried to, when I was with Bad Juju and my partner, I tried to give him guidance, and he wouldn't listen to me because he thought he knew better, and he didn't. He didn't. And it's just, there's a lot of different factors. People come and go. Over the last 14 years, I've seen, I know everything from artists to companies to friends. I've seen people just leave and not ever touch it again.
Yeah, I mean, same. There's a lot of designers I miss, and why does it always have to be the ones that are my favorites, the ones that I used to collect a lot of, like, Tim Biscup, Julie West. I mean, I know Julie recently did something with Kid Robot with the Care Bear series, but other than that, she hasn't done anything designer toy-wise in 4-6 years, and Van Meter, he designed one of my favorite toys, Crappy Cat.
Yep.
Neth Creatures, another line that was one of my favorites. Jared Deal. There's just so many artists that kind of I collect. I was really a fan of, and then yeah, they're just have not been a part of this community in many many years, and I miss them. And I would love to see what they would do if given the opportunity to do something again today.
Yeah, there's so many people that at the beginning, a lot of Japanese people that don't ever do stuff anymore,
Yeah.
and I miss them, because they're the ones that actually, got me into this stuff, and their designs are the one that pushed everything at the very beginning. And I miss their stuff. It's cool to see, Michael Loud still doing stuff here and there.
Yeah.
But I wish people like Jason Su, like Brothers Free, and a lot of the old school guys that did, 12 inchers used to be a huge thing. And there's not many people doing that anymore.
No.
It's more of like a Gentle Giant or what do you call it kind of thing now, more licensed stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, license has become really huge since, that's probably another one of the biggest things that's really changed since not only just self-producers, but the number of licensed properties that are now within the designer toy scene. And as far as like the 12 inchers, really the only one that I can think of is probably like Quicks with his Tech 63. That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. But did we lose Theresa? I think I haven't heard a peep from her in a while.
Well, no, I was just like, you all were talking about people you miss, and I was trying to rack my brain but I'm like drawing a blank. I'll have to come in and pipe in when we pop it in the group. But I mean, I totally agree. I think it's funny how things come and go, and
there used to be magazines. There used to be,
God, yeah.
Like Playtimes and
Flutter.
Flutter's still around, but like
Super 7 had one. There's a lot of different publications.
Yeah.
What was Playtimes?
It was a Singapore magazine wrapped around designer vinyl.
Huh.
And it was great. There's just all this stuff that was around, and a lot of it's not around anymore,
No, not really. I mean, not even really Clutter that much. Clutter has a big presence with 5 Points in their studio and their gallery, but as far as the publication anymore, I feel like I primarily see the publication as a freebie handout that's given out at the conventions. I don't think I've seen a quarterly release in a while now. So, I mean, Theresa, these publications were crucial for the designer toy scene in the early 2000s because that was one of the only few ways to actually learn about the artists and overseas toys and toy releases. I mean, other than the toy blogs, I think social media wise, Facebook was around, but that wasn't really how you were kind of discovering toys and stuff like that. So being able to pick up a publication and see a full article or a full spread interview on an artist or a company, that was pretty huge and really helped out. Nowadays, it's so easy. You just go to Instagram, search the hashtag designer toys, and down the rabbit hole you go.
Yeah.
And the message boards were huge.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Huge. Yeah. And it was great because you had a direct connection from the artist to the fans. And then, of course, like every message board, it just gets out of hand. And
it's true, though. But I do remember the good old forum days because you're right. You can go to a Kid Robot or a Stranger Factory, or there was a Sofubi one. The name's escaping me, or even Toy Break. You can go there and have a general toys discussion, but also a lot of the artists were in there themselves, and you can talk and engage with them. And that was something that was really cool. But like all good things, collectors whine and bitch, and immaturity happens, and then social media took over. But I can't remember the last time I went to a forum. I really can't. And honestly, we were kind of talking about this last week with our collector that came on. He was a Funko collector, and he was saying he's new to designer toys, and what he's noticed, the big difference between Funko and our community is we just don't have like a centralized thing to go to where he can learn about what's going on within our community. Like he's within Funko, whether you're a pop collector or mystery minis or spastic plastic or wacky wobblers or whatever you're collecting, you can just go to the Funko website and the forums there and all the collectors there chitter chattering, and it's all centralized. We don't have that. We got so many different companies and self-producers and artists and different types of collectors. We just don't have that one centralized location where someone new can come in and instantly learn about anything and everything that's designer toys and the history of and the releases. And you just got to pretty much stay on top of social media and the toy blogs, and that's it, and trying to develop some friendships however you can.
Yeah, there's not, like I said, there's not that, unless you have a place like back in the day, you usually had a brick and mortar near you that you would go and buy your toys from. And, you had places in major cities or places you can go to, and they're few and far between now. And but that's where you would go and meet people and actually meet artists and meet the owners of the toy store, and they would establish a solid relationship with people. And yeah, it's all breaking down now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's funny because I feel like for me personally, I almost feel like I came in at the right time because I don't have really anything near me, places I could easily go, and right now I'm finally in a position in my life that I've got enough money that I can make it to travel to Decon or Five Points or what have you. But I feel like I would have struggled at the beginning without a lot of stuff on the internet or whatever to find or buy, and having to go to specific events to purchase them. It would have been probably really hard for me. So in a way, I'm kind of glad that like I can go online and find a whole bunch of stuff and easily purchase. And the majority of what I buy these days is online versus in person at a store or an event or whatever. So for me, I'm happy because I can buy all sorts of stuff.
Kind of like what we were talking about stages with Kid Robot, old, new, change of hand and ownership and creative directors. It's sort of the same thing with the designer toy scene. We've seen different stages too. You saw the early days where people were producing runs of 10,000s and Sony was in the game and things were selling out. And there's, Dunny events. You would see, it was a Dunny event back in 2004 to 2008. They were just a different thing, Theresa. They were lines around the building and huge trade parties at all the stores. And it's gone. It doesn't feel, and I hope one day they can get back to doing it. I really think if Kid Robot can get rid of the pre-sale, the pre-order part of their game, and just do the Dunny drop without the pre-sale, I think that'll help. I really do think that they can get back to where they won't get back to the hype that they had and the demand maybe they had in the past, but I think they can get close to that again. But that's something that I kind of wish you, Theresa, I can't talk to you about what the heydays were, and that's where someone I can talk to Sket, and he's experienced it, he's seen it, and so yeah, you coming into it today, it might be better for you, but there was a time where it was vastly different.
Yeah. Honestly, I remember this one weekend, Kid Robot called me up, and I was releasing the Kid Robot 13 and Kid Robot 12 at the same time that I designed.
Wow.
And they flew me I went into New York, stayed over in New York. I went from New York, I had a signing there. The next day I went to LA, had a signing there. Spent the day in LA, and then I flew from LA to San Francisco and had a signing in San Francisco, and then went home from there. But every store I went to had a line going around the block and people waiting in line for the release. Mm-hmm. And I got to see 3 cities in one weekend, and I got to meet and enjoy a bunch of different people from 3 different cities. And just having that was like, electric. It was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, this is great. And it was because everybody I was involved with was cool. Like, there wasn't, any hate, or there wasn't any, disgust, or just like, there wasn't any bad blood anywhere. It was just all good.
Yeah.
And it was just an incredible thing to take part in. And, I guess when I go to cons and I get to attend cons and see all my friends and all the people that are involved, the same feelings there, but the electricity is just not, it's different. It's just changed.
It's different. And I never got to experience, that's awesome that you had a period of time where you had that really big family. I started this, podcast to have a family. And honestly, I want to say thank you to you. If you didn't start You Heard back in 2012 or whatever, there was Toy Break, and then there was You Heard, and Theresa says probably before you came in, but there was the You Heard podcast, and they would talk about toys and real talk and that sort of stuff. So that's, the fact that you did that with Ritzy and Kano and then Shane Jessup, I thank you for doing that, because that kind of allowed me to kind of, I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing today, but the fact that you guys started that and then you guys stopped doing that.
Yeah, which is blamed on me. It's blamed on me.
Way to go.
I told them to continue, but nobody wanted to continue. I was like, it's, you can continue with somebody else, but they were like, no. And Kano loves to blame me. Kano, if you're listening, I know you love to blame me. But I just had too much going on at my life during that particular time, and I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but you work on the podcast, and
Sure, it's hard
you know,
work.
it's hard work, and it's hard work to get four people together at the same time, and four people who have four different separate lives and stuff like that. So, at that particular time, I mean, honestly, I loved that time period. We had fun doing what we were doing, but yeah, just my life in particular got a little bit too hectic. That was during the whole bad juju time. So.
I get it. I do the podcast. We started the show with two different guys, and since then we've had interchanging, rotating co-hosts. And I can't imagine doing it where you had to try to get all four hosts. Like how many times we've gone without Georgia? If we tried getting all of us, our schedules all in unison, it would just be too hard to do on a regular basis. And you guys were, I think, a monthly podcast, and we were trying to do it weekly. There's just no way we could do that. So sometimes we just have to go without all co-hosts present. But like you said, if right now it's definitely myself, Theresa, and George. We have great chemistry, great communication. So if one of us dropped out, maybe the show would end. I don't know. But you heard, I mean, I miss Slow You Roll. That was a great segment. But yeah, so thank you for starting You Heard, because it basically gave myself a blueprint that, yeah, you can have an open and honest discussion about this little toy scene. You don't have to come on and kiss ass and say everything is amazing and stroke egos just to get ahead in the scene. I mean, I'm sure we've burned some bridges and stuff, but I like the fact that you can come on here and talk fairly about things, talk open about things, express an actual opinion about things. And I just like having discussion about the things I love. I love toys, and I love the artists in this community. I love this community. So I like being able to talk with George and Theresa and whatever guests we have on every single week and just talking about this thing that we're a part of. It's good to have discussion.
No, it's, our particular view, we would get into certain things. And of course, they were about, I might not even agree with some of the things that I said at the particular time that the podcast was on, now. Yeah. I mean, everyone's opinions change, and you're allowed to do that. I mean, that makes you a human being. You learn from mistakes, and you learn from speaking on things and going through situations and stuff. But yeah, I enjoyed it. We enjoyed it, and we definitely do miss it. And we've been talking about kind of doing like an anniversary show or just
a reunion.
Come back.
You should.
Yeah, just come back as a reunion, just a one-off thing. But everybody's lives are just so busy now. I mean, all of us are just, Ritzy has Kanoa now, and Shane's been traveling and, doing a ton of mural work. And Kano's working at Cartoon Network, and he's got his side stuff and his side hustle going on. And yeah, we're all super busy. So hopefully it will come to fruition.
That'd be awesome. I love the show. It was really good. I enjoyed it. And I learned a lot of new words from that show, too. I'm not one for street lingo. I grew up in the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona, so listening to you guys throwing out some new words, that was cool.
That was all Kano, probably.
What, Theresa?
Gary, why don't I ever hear you throw out the street lingo you've learned?
No, that's dope. To hear someone like me say dope, it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely asinine. But it works. Some other people can pull it off.
Like Eric, sad salesman.
Eric, so sad salesman. Are you familiar with him, Sket?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry.
He's like myself, It's so he would comment dope on everything I made, like a post. He'd say dope. He says it's funningly, funningly. See, this is another thing. I make up a lot of words on this show. And funningly is not a word. But when he came on the show, I had to call him out on using dope because it's just, he's not allowed to use that word. Nope.
I like his work.
Oh, yeah, and his stuff's great. I mean, he's one of those guys that just started out self-producing. He's instantly become one of my favorites. And actually, this year he won Breakthrough Artist of the Year at the DTA. So we should be seeing a Dunny from him soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. So many people out there that are doing this stuff, and I find that to be absolutely awesome. Yeah. Like he didn't need a big company, or I just feel like nowadays everyone has a platform to scream from. And if you have the passion and if you have the heart, you can do, you can scream.
Yeah, for sure.
If
you had the motivation, if you have all of that, you can definitely succeed in this designer toy scene for sure. But, I just looked at the clock. We're almost an hour and a half. I can't believe how much ground we cover in this hour and a half. But unfortunately, we're going to have to start wrapping it up. So before we do that, how about we do a quick round of lightning questions with you?
Okay, sounds good to me.
All right, so do you remember what your first designer toy was? Not your first one, but the first one you purchased.
First one I purchased was Tristan Eaton's Brooklyn Key.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
What was your most recent designer purchase?
Most recent. Wow. Wow. Because the thing is sometimes I get gifts,
Sure.
but my actual purchase, um, it would be a snap, crackle, and pop, like vintage.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are you a
Ooh,
vintage?
I
Are
want to see
you
a
are you a
photo of
vintage
that.
collector?
Yeah, you know what? If it looks cool and it resonates with me, I buy it. Like
Yeah.
it's more of the feeling, and I don't even think about material. I mean, if it's vintage and it has some dings and some dents or something like that, then it doesn't bother me.
Oh,
Um,
Teresa couldn't have that. She likes her
yeah.
things crisp and pristine. No
No,
vintage in Teresa's collection.
honestly, it's all for me. It's all the feeling
Yeah.
that I get from the
Yeah.
piece. You know.
Right. And that's how it should be.
But Gary, vintage is a little different. Like I wouldn't necessarily expect to find. There's something about the story in those dents to a vintage piece that's a little bit different. It's not
Yeah.
something I collect personally, but I totally respect it. And I think if I collected vintage, I'd probably have a different perspective on the quality.
Yeah. And
So
there's something to having a little bit of history and a little patina and stuff. But
yeah, yeah. Like I wouldn't want like a fresh out of the box thing from the 50s. Like to me, I'd rather have it
A little
look
more.
like, yeah, like look like it went through something.
okay. Is there a holy grail in your collection, Scott?
Yeah, I have an original Shepherd Fairy piece.
Wow.
It's literally, I bought it off eBay back in, I want to say 2000, and I bought it from somebody who took it off the street.
Okay.
And Logan Hicks is on the back of it, so I actually have two pieces. But it's a street sign, and I would say that would have to be the Holy Grail.
That's awesome.
That and my hand-painted Neil Blender deck by Neil Blender.
Oh, that's right. You're a skater kid. Me too.
Yes, I am.
Me too. I think all of us in our 40s, all the males in our 40s seem to be skater kids. It's something we can all sort of relate to.
Skate and graffiti. Without it, I don't know where I'd be.
All right. What was your favorite toy growing up as a kid?
Star Wars. Anything Star Wars.
Nice.
You know, just Star Wars figures.
Are you still into it today?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't have a lot of like vintage Star Wars. I don't collect it per se, but I definitely do have Star Wars stuff in my collection.
Okay. And we're gonna make the last question a tough one. If there was a Mount Rushmore of toy designers, who would be on it?
Ooh. Mount Rushmore of toy designers. God, there's so many different genres of
I
just
know.
toy designers.
It's. I can think about this question for days.
Yeah,
Put
I
me on
mean,
the
I'm
spot.
just gonna go with my particular genre, like Western vinyl designers.
Sure.
Well, no, I can't because I have Michael Lau. Michael Lau would definitely have to be in there. You know, Tristan would definitely have to be in there.
Okay.
Who else would have to be in there? Claus would have to be in there.
Okay. One more.
One more. I'll throw Frank in there for good measure, just because
Here's
I'll be nice to Frank today.
Always be nice to your CD. All right, Sket. It's been awesome. Great talking with you. We covered a lot of ground, so that was awesome.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining. Why don't you take a brief moment and let our listeners know where they can find you?
You can go to sket-one.com, Instagram, sket_one. Yeah, that's probably the two main spots I'll be.
All right, perfect. Teresa, where can people find you?
If people want to find me, they can check me out on Instagram. My username is tmhawk24.
And I am Gary Ham. You can find me at superham.com or Gary Ham on Instagram. This has been the Marsham Toy Hour. We do this every other week, not because we have to,
But because we want to.
So until our next transmission, we're signing off. And thanks again, Sket, for joining. I mean, especially on your birthday. So enjoy the rest of your birthday night and have a great 48.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you guys
happy
again.
birthday.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.